right. Oh, jeez.
Sorry.
He's had a stack. he's had a headphone stack. And welcome to the Pagey train. Today I have in the studio Bina Bhattacharya from Femme Pictures, director, owner, operator. Welcome to the Pagey train.
Thank you, Ross. It's great to be here. It's a very warm night. There's nowhere else I'd rather be.
Yeah, that was, well, we got cold drinks.
Yeah.
We got a cool studio and we are ready to rock and roll. And speaking of rocking and rolling, this is the last episode of the season, so it's a bit of a special occasion. But yeah, let's talk film.
Oh,
let's
my
talk
favourite
film.
thing to talk about, so, it's a good thing that you brought up.
Well, totally. So you're a director.
Yes, writer-director, yeah.
Yeah, a writer-director.
I'm a writer-director, reluctant producer. Yes.
I think we're all reluctant producers.
Well, you just kind of have to get in there and do it.
Yeah, it's one of those administration processes.
Yes. That's why good producers are worth their weight in gold. But yes, I'm a writer-director and reluctant producer.
So what? Okay, the big question, I always ask a director, why a director? Why do you want to be a director?
I think, look, I loved movies from a very young age, and I think like most kids who were sort of into movies and drama, I think I probably wanted to be an actor first. And then I think in my teen years, I sort of realised that I wasn't a great actor, but I had really good ideas about, characters and what could be going on. And I was always sort of coming up with stories in my head. And I became really, really obsessed with movies in my teen years. And it was just kind of a logical thing. Once I learnt what a director was, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's it. There's actually a video of me in my crowdfunder video for Wild Dances. There's a video of me at my 7th birthday. I didn't know what a director was at that point, but I'm bossing all my friends around saying, okay, the story is that the world has fallen upside down and we're all flying. You have to stand there and you have to stand there. So, I didn't even know what a director was, but I was directing. It's a very cute video.
I think that's online. Can you go to the YouTube channel where you got Wild Dances there? I think it's in that channel. Is that your channel? Yeah.
Yeah, if you go to my channel, you should find my Indiegogo video, and there's a very funny video of me. There's
bossing people around
on my 7th birthday. It's pretty funny. And so, that's the thing. Before I even knew what a director was, I kind of wanted to be a director.
So you already had it sort of ingrained at you when you were like 7 years old.
I think when I was 5. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
2 years ago. Also on a couch, doing my piece to camera.
I think I can tell what you cut this in. Was this Final Cut 10?
No, we're Adobe people.
Adobe.
Femme, yes.
Oh, the Adobe tribe.
People.
I'm Adobe and Final Cut, actually.
Well, then you're bisectional or whatever. You're bi-software.
I'm bi-programmable.
Bi-programmable. I love it. So this is the thing. I think when I was about 5 or 6, people would say, okay, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I think I said I wanted to be an author, an actress, an opera singer, and a florist. And I wanted to have 5 children, but I thought I would be too busy to have a husband. As it turns out, I actually have an awesome husband who is my partner in crime and filmmaker. He's the other half of Femme Pictures, Alexander McGee.
Big shout out, Alexander.
I love you, Alexander. All my films get made because of you and because of your endless patience, and there are many, many fights that happen before the films get made.
He's a very patient man.
He's extraordinarily patient. So
because I must say, there's one a character trait that you have that I just absolutely admire, and you are a fierce, intense person, and you just got an amazing energy. I just absolutely love it.
Oh, thanks, Ross. That's very nice. I mean, look, it's funny because I read about different directors, and they all do. Directors I really love all have very different styles. So. Someone like Pedro Almodovar, my hero, which we'll probably talk about later because he's such a big influence on me, but he is like a really obsessive director. He literally, when they do the cast read, he'll have Penelope Cruz and Antonio Banderas, all these incredible Spanish actors around the table. And he will literally read the script in all the different voices, and he'll be the 80-year-old lady, and he'll be the 14-year-old girl, and he does all the voices like that. When you go to film school, but you're taught not to do that. You should never tell an actor how to say a line. They've got to find it themselves. Otherwise, it will sound contrived.
That's true.
And so there he is breaking all the rules, and he's the world's greatest filmmaker. And he's like super hands-on, and he does the production design. He furnishes every shot. Like, he's just so hands-on. And then you have somebody like Woody Allen, who... basically actors, he works with like the greatest actors in the world, and they have to chase him down between takes saying, was that okay? And do I need to do it differently? He's like, yeah, no, you're fine. He's really, really hands off. So they both create extraordinary films, and like they're actors, directors, and their approach is completely different. So, yeah. Yeah,
that's an interesting contrast. But when was it, like, did you start directing movies as a teenager? Or?
Yes, my first first film, it's really funny. We cleaned out my parents' garage and we found it. It's called The Cat Burglar. It was based on like an urban legend. I can dig it out and like find you a copy and digitize it. It's about a...
You should totally do that.
It's about a boy who, and it was played by my friend Max at the time, who manages to hit a cat while he's backing out of his parents' driveway, and he doesn't know what to do with the cat. He rings the council. He can't get a straight answer. He knocks on his neighbours' doors to see if it's their cat. He can't work out what's happening, and eventually the council tell him to put it in a plastic bag, and they give him an address to dispose of it. And he does this, but he picks a David Jones bag, and while he's waiting, he realizes he has to call his girlfriend. He leaves the bag on the hood of his car, and it gets stolen. And then he follows the woman who steals it, and she basically looks inside and faints. I mean, it was kind of like, one of those urban legend type stories, but I made a film about it when I was 14, and it's called The Cat Burglar.
The Cat Burglar.
And then I didn't understand about music rights at the tender age of 14, but over the closing credits, you have Tom Jones' What's New Pussycat.
Yeah, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, but I could at 14.
Well, I don't think a lot's changed with you. Because I remember, talking to you about Wild Dances.
Yes.
And because that film was about. I'm sorry to jump ahead into Wild Dances straight away.
No, that's my big film. Like, we can talk about Wild Dances.
Well, look, before we go on about Wild Dances, you've got to totally check it out. It's not actually published at the moment.
Yeah, no, it is. It's absolutely online. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Go check out Wild Dances. It's this. I must say before I go on, it's one of my most favourite films in Made in the West. I really enjoyed that. But because it's tell us a little bit about it, because it's about Eurovision.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll skip it because it's kind of a really interesting story how I ended up making this film about Eurovision. So I always wanted to be a filmmaker. Really, really passionate about it.
Hard to get music rights off Eurovision. That's where we're going with this.
And you helped me with that, Ross. You're a big part of the reason why it's out there, freely available. Okay. So teen years, obsessed with making movies. I do media arts at UCS. I enter the kind of workforce at 21, and it's really gross. It's a bunch of people from the North Shore. It's a bunch of like white guys who went to shore. They've got nothing interesting to say. It's all advertising. It's real kind of icky. I felt so out of place. I was from Western Sydney.
Icky and clicky, eh?
Yeah, it was just kind of not nice. Like the industry's really gross, and I felt very out of place. I felt very like young. I felt very female. Like it was just really not great. And I ended up getting fired from my first job, which was working for a post-production house. They did like mostly advertising, and it was just like, it was a really terrible cultural fit for me. Of course they couldn't say that to me, but it was just really, really bad. And then I went and did the other thing I knew how to do, which was my mum was a public servant, so I joined the public service, and I was a very good public servant, because a lot of the skills it takes to be a filmmaker, it's
a hustle.
Well, you got to write, and you've got to kind of be good on the phone, and
being a public servant is a hustle.
Well, I did it for however many years, and I was very good at it.
It's all systems. It's all systems that you got to maneuver.
Well, and I was very passionate about, I was very passionate about social justice and doing the right thing by people. So I worked for the prison health system for about 5 years, and that was a really interesting job. It was very rewarding, but I was really unhappy because I wasn't making films. I kind of, I was very seduced by kind of the trappings of middle class sort of, I rented, Alex was part of the story very early on. We moved in together. We lived in Stanmore. So I think, I got very seduced by sort of middle class lifestyle, having like a good salary, living in the inner west. But I was so unhappy because I was not making films. And I kept on saying, when I make a film, I'll one day I will. And then, we did it. We kind of packed up our jobs and we moved overseas, and I wrote a screenplay. And I don't think it's good enough to be made, but it was good for me to kind of sit down for a few months and write a screenplay. I was living in New Orleans and I wrote a screenplay. And then a whole bunch of stuff happened. I ended up moving to London. Alex had a job with CNN, and I had a baby.
Super cool.
Yeah, who's a journalist, and that's
very pretty cool.
It's very cool. It's a lot of journalists. It's interesting because journalists are about the truth and documenting, the world. But so many of them that I meet, I love movies. And I'm like, well, and I always say, like, one's not more valid than the other. Like, making a fictional film is just as valid a way of documenting the world around you as,
Absolutely. You got to remember, news is entertainment.
Well, sadly,
that news is entertainment.
It shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be, but that's what it is.
Well, and that's why I just sort of, he's not the first journalist I know that kind of has a real passion for filmmaking. So
I think it's really cool that you're both over there writing, and he's doing journalism, and you're doing making films.
Well, I wasn't. I gave birth. I was a stay-at-home mother, and I kind of thought, okay, I'm at home with a baby. There's no pressure for me to have like an adult job anymore because I'm on maternity leave. Maybe I should try writing a script again, and I did. I wrote a script which was Alter Ego, which I optioned at the beginning of the year, so that's a whole other really exciting story. But I wrote a draft for this script, which I knew was really good. It was head and shoulders above the first one I did. It was really, really, really strong. But it was, it was complicated for other reasons. Anyway, so I wrote this script, and I came back to Australia. It was really, really tough having a small child overseas. And I did a table reading, and one of the people who attended, and I'll do a shout out to her, which is Maren Smith, fantastic indie film producer, worked a lot with Von Patiag, dear friend of mine. Shout out to Von, I love you very, very much.
Big shout out to Von, one of the original rock stars of Maine in the West.
He totally is, and he's also like, as well as being supremely talented and a great collaborator and a really good writer and friend to a lot of people, he's like really great to sort of chat film with. So this year I texted him because I needed some advice, and he's just so generous and immediately like had interesting things to say. So love you, Von, big shout out. But Maren Smith attended my table reading, and she gave me some very good feedback. She said, Bina, this is a very good script, but you will never be allowed to direct this. And I go, why? And she says, you don't have any credits in the past 10 years. Like the most you could get, even if you were able to.
So is this a feature length?
Yeah, Alter Ego is a feature length script.
Yeah, okay, wow.
And so she said, you would never be able to direct this. You don't have any credits. And I took that to heart. And then I sort of thought, well, okay, I guess I just have to go and make a film. And
well, she's got a point.
She's got a great point.
It's a point. Like, you can. There's nothing wrong with being having that ambition, but there is a practicality to it as well.
Well, and I kind of needed someone to tell me that. She's like, you don't have any film credits in the past 10 years. And I'd made a very good, I think, it's on my website, In My Skin, which was my student film while I was at UCS. I had made a pretty sophisticated and interesting student film, but I literally shot that on film. It was on 16mm. I didn't know how to shoot a digital film.
You shot a film on film?
Yeah, I did.
Tell us about that.
I loved it. I love working on film.
Because working on film is you got to have such discipline to work with that.
At the time, that was what was available to me. Like, I studied film at I did media arts and production at UTS. I started in 2004 and I finished in 2007. And digital filmmaking was like mini DV.
Yeah, wow. So it's like it's not, you don't make film.
Well, the first film I remember that came out that kind of had a wide release that was 100% shot on like mini DV was The Anniversary Party, which had I think Jennifer Jason Leigh, and it was really grainy and awful looking. And then digital films now is like even Pedro Almodovar has moved to digital because it looks so good now, and it's so much cheaper.
There's a few that stood out. I think 28 Days Later, that was one of the first sort of digital films.
Oh, really? Yeah. Interesting.
Well, that's how they were able to do that England scene where he's walking through a vacant London, and he just had cameras everywhere.
By the way, it's actually on my Vimeo. If you want to get my Vimeo up.
See if you can pull up the
Just
Vimeo.
Google Bina Bhattacharya.
Let's see how, checking out his speed. Keeping him on his toes.
Sorry. Don't mean to be like, oh, look, I know exactly what you're trying to go for, and it's there. It's just not what you're so, shooting on film back then, it was all that was available to me. It was what they taught on. It was what looked good. It cost the university a lot of money, but they made a really strong business case that it was a good thing to teach people.
It's important to teach people visual language.
I also,
in the process of doing it.
I'll probably never make another film on film ever again because the industry's moved beyond that. But I think it's a really great skill to have because I made my film having to just really trust my DOP when I made my student film because I couldn't see what she could see. We shot on a Bolex camera,
Yeah, you don't have that. See, that's a totally different experience. Like, there's no going back and looking at what the take was like.
No. You have to trust that it looks good.
You've got to trust that it's in focus. You've got to trust that it's framed well. Speaking
of directors, like Quentin Tarantino, I remember watching an interview with him, and he says he never looks at the monitor; he looks at his actors, and that's actually something I've really taken to heart.
That's important, right?
Be present with your actors.
Be present, yeah,
because they actually want they want to know that you're happy.
Well, Tarantino is a real stickler. He won't go to digital. He still shoots on film,
and I'm really glad he does.
Yeah.
I'm really glad he does.
So am I. I was really privileged to go to a popcorn taxi to watch a couple of Australian films that Tarantino was presenting, and they had these big 32mm like old school projectors in the back of this. It wasn't a theatre; it was just set up in an auditorium, and you can hear the machines behind you. It's such a amazing experience.
I saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood twice, and the second time we drove to the Randwick Ritz. Which actually does not take that long from Campbelltown if anyone wants to do it, to see a movie that you like. It's about a 45 minute to an hour on a weekday night, which is what we did. But, and we watched it on like 35 millimeter, and it was a completely different film. So yeah. But I learned to shoot on film. So this is the thing. This is how outdated my skills were. Like the last thing I had made at that point, we're talking 2016 when I arrived back from London, and Maren makes the point. She just goes, "You don't have any film credits." I'm like, "Oh, I better get onto that. Better make a film." And Jane Campion.
Yeah, but you made a film on film. Like it's totally different. I think that's my point. Like I think it takes such a discipline to just know that you've got it right.
Yeah,
no
it was a good experience. I think, look, inexperienced directors take too many takes and they watch their monitors too often.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point.
Yeah, and so...
I think anyone can get trapped in that, though. Anyone can get trapped in that. Especially, what do you do when, you ever get the actor that goes, "Can I have a look at that take?" Do you show your actors the take?
Yeah, I do, because them feeling safe is such a big part of it. Them feeling emotionally safe is a big part of it. So if they want to review it, then I'm usually okay with that. But, you're usually under time pressure. I would never say, "No, you can't see that." I would say, "Absolutely, of course you can. Let's have a look."
Sometimes I restrict them. I go, "No, you're on a roll, man. You just got to trust that it's good. We got to do the next shot."
Yeah. Sometimes you do just have to move them along. If they went back after every single one, I'd be like, "Okay, you're fine. You don't need to keep doing this."
Being way too self-conscious. But so then you've realised that you need to do this film. So then to get Alter Ego up and running, you've decided to write another script.
Well, no. So this is the thing. So I'm like, okay, well, I've got this feature script. Now I better make a short that I can actually make. And Jane Campion talks about how when you make your first film, you're like naive and it's a good thing, because if you later went back and tried to make it, you would be too scared to. And it was like that. Like I was really naive.
Yeah, you wouldn't be that audacious. Yeah.
I remember telling someone about Wild Dances. I'm like, because it was based on a friend's true story. So a really dear friend of mine grew up in Taralga, which is just outside of Goulburn, only gay in the village, very closeted, watched Eurovision in secret, all that kind of thing. And it's pretty much the story as it plays out. He used to secretly watch Eurovision, and he was obsessed with Ruslana in 2004, which was, the year she won. And then he managed to convince the DJ at his very conservative Catholic country high school to play Wild Dances, and out of the woodwork came the only girl from an immigrant family who was also
because it's a bilingual film. Is it Ukrainian?
In real life, yes. In real life, I took a lot of dramatic liberty. In real life, the woman who was his really good friend, and he came with the premiere to her. It was so adorable. Like they came and they were wearing suits. It was really, really sweet to the premiere of Wild Dances. But and they broke into dance, and everybody like around them was just completely perplexed and had never heard the song before. And it plays out pretty similar to how it does in the film. But what I didn't want to do was I didn't want to make a film that was about a gay boy where like the wog girl is just kind of a B plot. I wanted to make it as much about her as it was about him. And so I kind of drew on my own experiences growing up with a strict immigrant father. And I thought, okay, well, what if when that song plays at that school dance, there has to be as much emotional impact for her as there is for him. So maybe what's the significance of the song to her? And then I thought maybe something to do with a boy. No, that's really boring. How about her father didn't want to let her go to the dance, and she's having a terrible time, and she's forced to take her brother along. So, which I saw like immigrant girls at my school who are Polish, Greek, Russian. A lot of them had that thing.
So you're going through this process of relating to this story, and then trying to figure out a sort of approach to how you tell that story, and you're going through that process.
Yeah, you kind of work back from what the climax was. So the climax had to be the song comes on. It means something to both of them. What does it mean? So obviously for him it's his chance to dance, and he's in the closet, so this is his song. And for her it's her liberation dance as well. So that's kind of how I worked back. And so I wrote this script, and it's a good script, and I wanted to have her arguing with her parents in Ukrainian, blah 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 blah. I wanted it to be really authentic. And then I remember sending this project, it was early 2017, and Eurovision was going to be in Kiev, and I had this really bold plan that SBS would get behind it and screen it on the night of Eurovision. Of course, none of that happened. Sucks to be them. Totally. Did really well.
I think they dropped the ball on that, actually.
Yeah. When I'm a famous director in a few years' time, they'll do it as a retrospective, and hopefully they can clean up the sound, which I always felt like wasn't as good as it could be.
The sound's never as good as you want it to be.
I think so. But anyway, so this is the thing. I was like, super naive. I'm like, I'll just make a film about Eurovision. And it'll have all these characters, and it will have all these scenes, and it will have...
Referencing Eurovision.
Yeah, but that, on paper...
It seems all right.
That was the easiest part. I wrote to them. I wrote to the person who was in charge of their music rights, and I said, hello, I'm a filmmaker from Australia, and I've got this script, and it's a love song to Eurovision, and it's a love song to Australia's love of Eurovision, and they were so happy. And I have in my email a signed letter from Jon Olesan, who is now the outgoing. He's about to resign, but he was the managing supervisor of Eurovision for the past 8 years.
Yeah.
And I'm really sad because now that he's retired, that email doesn't mean as much. But it was huge. Jon Olesan.
No, I think it does. I think it does, because to contact an organisation like that and to get them on board with your script and with your idea is a massive feat.
Well, honestly, it was the best part. But then I scaled my film. So if Eurovision had said no thank you, I would have made a very different film. I would have made a film. I still would have made a film about a boy and a girl that bond over some Ukrainian music. But I would have called it like the Eurosquizen Song Contest, and instead of Ruslana, I would have had Oksana or something, and I would have had to like find someone to compose an original song, and I would have shot it on iPhones. I just would have made a smaller film. But because I got Eurovision, I thought I really can't squander that opportunity. I've got the music rights to the song.
Interesting. So by getting that done, it puts you under the pressure to like up the production value.
Absolutely. I'm like, I cannot squander away the opportunity to make a film with the actual Ruslana song that looks cheap. So at that point, like I said, I didn't know any. If I had made Wild Dances today, I would have had all these people from Western Sydney to draw upon, but I didn't know anyone at that point because there was nobody.
You got to find your way, right?
Yeah, so I had Rob Morton, who was recommended to me by a friend, and he was like a proper working DP, and he was really happy to do it, but he's like, okay, well, to make this film the way I would like to make it, I'm going to need 2 camera assistants, and I'm going to need a grip and a gaffer and a best boy and a best boy assistant. I'm just like, okay. And look how the budget was huge.
Shit.
Yeah.
You've just like peaked into like tens of thousands of dollars to do that.
Oh yes, absolutely. We did a crowdfunder which was quite successful. We raised $11,000, but of course I still had to significantly dip into my own money.
Yeah.
But I don't regret it. I honestly I now have this thing with fantastic production values to my name. If I'd been a good little girl and written to Screen Australia and begged them for money, and every few years they'd give me a slightly bigger budget to do something with, I would still never have something that looks as good as Wild Dances.
No, I don't think you would.
No. So sometimes
it is pristine. It is a pristine film. Absolutely.
Thank you. But and that's the thing. And so that was the thing. I kind of just jumped into it like, okay, well, this is my chance.
And to get Eurovision on board with it.
Yeah. So I
hustle.
spent all the money. Yeah. And I just took this massive gamble. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to make this really expensive looking film. But I'm really, really glad I did. Honestly, that film changed my life. It kind of it launched me into being a serious kind of writer director.
Yeah.
And Man in the West was a big part of that, kind of getting to feel like a real director.
But we got some real directors in Western Sydney. Like you guys,
I think so.
We're out and about and we're doing stuff, man. Like, and it's really cool. I think we should totally celebrate that and walk the red carpet, have a few champagnes, and watch our stuff on the big screen. Cheers.
Yes. But yeah, it was just really, really special. I made this film, and then kind of my life changed a little bit from then on. Then all of a sudden I could apply for initiatives, and I had this 15-minute film.
Yeah, now you got some ground. You got a foothold. You get a foothold after making a film like that.
Yeah, and it was probably a really big part of me, getting into the Behind Closed Doors project that Co-Curious is running, that I'm also from Patag is also a part of.
Yeah.
Yes.
Big shout out to Co-Curious.
Yes, who are amazing nurturers of talent in Western Sydney. So that's that's a screen project that's in the works at the moment. They actually asked to it because I had to put a writing resume and I had to put some samples of my writing, and they said we'd be very interested to see your film about Ukrainians, and I was like, oh well.
Oh sure, well here it is.
Here's what I prepared earlier.
Here's what I worked on earlier. I finished this on Sunday.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Absolutely. So you got to show it at Made in the West. So Wild Dances was the first time I met you. And it was very well received at the Paddington Arrow.
That night was really special. So I finished the film in May. When I said to people that I was going to make a film about Eurovision that was going to debut on the night of the Eurovision Song Contest in May 2017, everybody told me that I was crazy and it couldn't be done. And my line was, well, they were only half right. I am crazy, but I got it done.
Yeah, well, that's more important. I think once you get it done, you move from being crazy to eccentric.
Well, yeah, I was an accomplished crazy person, very much in debt at that point. But anyway, so I made this film, and then I submitted to about 1 billion festivals. And then you get so many rejections.
I know. Well,
and you lose sight. You just sort of think, oh my God, have I made a rubbish film? I got so many rejections. And then the first acceptance I got, I'll just never forget. I watched David Lynch's Twin Peaks: The Return, the final episode, which is a fucking acid trip and a half. And I had a really weird dream that night. And I was very used to sort of answering my emails and getting a, dear Bina, thank you so much for submitting wild dances to our blah blah festival. Unfortunately, we cannot include it in our program. Blah, blah, blah. While we had many great entries, and you just kind of get used to how they read. And then I opened one, and it was like, dear Bina, congratulations, your film has been selected. And it was the Kino Film Festival in Manchester, which is a fantastic festival in Manchester in the north of England. And that was just like, once that happened, all the good luck started happening. So the Melbourne Women in Film Festival accepted my film.
Yeah, once you get those laurels start to stack, it gets a bit better, I think.
I almost feel like festivals, once they see that you've been accepted into a few, and then, of course, San Jose in America, but Made in the West was the first screening that I attended. So it was my first experience. I didn't fly to Manchester. I did fly to San Jose, but that was several months afterwards.
Yeah. But you already spent all the money on the film. Like, how are you going to fly across the world to go and see a movie?
I got a job.
Yeah. We all have to get a job, Peter. Happens all the time. Can
I say I'm not in a bad financial situation? I just bought a house. So.
Yeah, well, congratulations.
So it's not like I squandered away. People spend money on stupider things than films. People renovate. People buy cars they don't need. Like, I don't.
Yeah, that's true. You can do up a car, or you can make a movie.
Yeah. So I say that to people, and I'm just like, and you can be a good little, beg Screen Australia and Create New South Wales and all those initiatives that have like a handful of money, and you can do like a teensy 2-minute web series, and then they might let you upgrade to a 5-minute one, or they might let you upgrade to a 2-minute short film or whatever. But you'll never have enough money, whether it's 100,000 or 1,000.
Yeah, depending on what the scope is. But look, I've got to tell you, I'll always be knocking on their door.
Of course. But I say this to filmmakers. I say, don't seek permission from anyone. Just go and make your film. Go and
do it and see if you can get
go and make your film. Go. Just if you have something interesting to say, people will want to collaborate with you. People with the technical know-how will want to collaborate with you. Yeah, good actors will want to collaborate with you.
Yeah, you got to enroll people in the idea. I get to shoot my movie next year. I'm really stoked. I get to shoot my movie next year. Finally.
Congratulations. I'm really excited to see it.
It's only a short, though.
But still.
Yeah. But you got to get those shorts in so you can get that big dream. So your big dream is to still do Alter Ego?
Yeah, well that's I can't talk too much about that, but yeah, I did option the script to that.
Just on the outskirts.
Which is very exciting. But that would be a challenge too. That would be a challenge too, because yes, that would be a really risky project for and I had to get like really detailed legal advice about how do I make sure I don't get dealt out of this, because plenty of people write scripts, women in particular write scripts, and then they get kind of told, we'll give you X amount of money to make the film, but we don't want this Bina directing it because we don't know who she is. Let's go find this established director who's usually a
you should totally direct your movie.
Yeah.
You've got to totally direct your movie.
But this is the thing. John Waters, who I'm a big fan of and I talk a lot about, because he kind of, when John Waters was born in 1946 in Baltimore, there was no film scene in Baltimore. None. People who made films in the US either lived in New York or
obviously LA.
Or LA.
Yeah.
And do you know how he made films? He went, and the only people in Baltimore that had cameras, there were no smartphones, there weren't digital cameras. The only people that had like movie film cameras were the news people. So he managed to convince the blue-collar news workers in Baltimore, hey, I know it's against your contract, but if I give you $200, will you give me your camera overnight? We'll return it to you in the morning. And he made movies that way. And if John Waters could do that in frickin' the 60s and 70s, and we have iPhones now. What excuse do we have to not be making films?
Accessibility has totally changed. It is totally accessible. To
one of the most interesting filmmakers for me at the moment is Sean Baker, who made Tangerine on a fucking iPhone, and it's brilliant. He has something interesting to say, and the performances are fantastic. So I always just say, just don't seek permission. Don't, of course, see if you can get the funding agencies to come on board. Do a crowdfunder. Do it once. I'm never going to do one ever again, I don't think.
But it was worth it though.
It was.
It got 10 grand or so behind your film, and that's the boost that movie needed.
Absolutely, and it was. I don't regret any of it. And like I say, I'm really proud of the work that I did. I really wanted to have a girl speaking Ukrainian to her parents because I thought that was authentic. And then, of course, I'm like, well, I don't speak Ukrainian, so I had to get Ukrainians on board. They had to really feel like they owned the project. And it was a real challenge. I thought, where am I going to find a girl between the ages of 16 and 25 years old who is a good enough actress to be a leading lady, can dance, and and speaks fluent Ukrainian, and not just any Ukrainian. It has to be the Ukrainian of people who immigrated in the early noughts. The story doesn't work. If her dad came post-war in the 50s, he wouldn't mind his daughter going to a school dance. He has to be a recently arrived immigrant, which means he had to, so Ukrainians came to Australia in two waves. A whole bunch came after the Second World War, and a whole bunch came after the collapse of the USSR, and he had to have been in that second group. And so I had these incredible Ukrainian script consultants, Ulia Buya, who worked for SBS Ukraine, and a mutual friend put me in touch with her, and Mariana Sivak, who had worked in Ukrainian television, and they were both from Lviv. They spoke the right Ukrainian. I had them involved in casting. I had them involved on the script. And yeah, I really did my research about involving that community, and that's why the film is as good as it is, because, I feel like a lot of directors, a lot of people, if they had made that film, they would have gone, well, we can't get Ukrainians because it's too hard, so let's just make her Russian.
Yeah, you would have just settled.
Let's just get Margot Robbie and dye her hair brown.
I think that's one thing I like about the film. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, there is the subtext that's in the film is really well structured. I love the subtext. I think that's what's attractive about it. But I think further than that is that you didn't you didn't like settle. You didn't settle for it. You've gone, no, we won't make it Russian. We're making it Ukrainian because the script says it's Ukrainian.
Well, because it's like it's going
to be Eurovision.
There's a freaking war about it at the moment. Yeah,
I'm not going to create a fake company.
Oh, I could have. If I didn't get permission, I would have. That would have been my.
Yeah, I know, but you went like an arrow towards it, and I think that's what worked for it.
Yeah, I do, and I think I just say this to filmmakers: like, sometimes you've just got to bank on yourself and just do it. And I think that was the thing. I'd taken the plunge. I was so motivated to make Alter Ego that I was just kind of like, okay, well, I'm going to. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be.
No, just everyone does the bangs.
Yeah, I was just like, okay, well, I've just got to make this film. So yeah, Wild Dances happened. My life changed. I started to, get some serious festival buzz. And then something that had occurred to me when I was making Wild Dances, casting it had been a real challenge. Yeah. Both the leads were really difficult to cast. I couldn't have been luckier to get Lachlan and Olga, who just did such a superb job.
They did. Big shout out, guys. Big shout out.
Well, and Olga had never acted other than like Year 9 drama before, and she was just a complete.
Oh, really?
Yeah, complete.
She's never done that before.
She was nominated for Best Actress at Man in the West, which was
totally
superb. It was a great feeling for me.
Great job.
So I'd been so blessed, but casting it had been a real hassle, and I'd had to wade through so many terrible show reels for actors. So I was very blessed, obviously, to find the leads of Wild Dances, but I had waded through some really terrible actor show reels. And what struck me about actor show reels is the acting was fine. Often this actor was really great, and they were acting their little hearts out, but the material...
It wasn't the right movie.
Okay, if you're going to have like a big operatic Oscar confessional scene that played in a movie with lots of sweeping orchestral music and amazing camera work, don't have it in a fucking one setup against a white wall. I
hate this. I know exactly what you're saying.
It's bad directing choices.
Yeah, pick a background, man.
Well, it's just kind of like...
Anything.
It was either the scripts were either really terrible, or it was like a line from a famous movie that everybody had already watched, so everyone would just be projecting whatever, freaking Emma Stone's performance or whatever. You'd be competing against that in people's minds. Or it was like this big weepy operatic scene like done in like a grainy shit up. I was like, you can totally do an iPhone scene, but make it naturalistic and funny. Like do a different set.
May as well just set it up. If you've gone to that effort, you may as well go the extra effort.
Well, right? And I just saw so many bad show reels, and I thought, maybe I could do like a little project where I kind of collaborate with emerging actors, and I write them a little scene where they get to kind of play against type. Obviously, diversity in...
what you're talking about is your showpiece shorts.
Yep, showpiece shorts. So this was Gemme de la Femme's project. So we created Gemme de la Femme to make Wild Dances, and then we're kind of like, okay, well, I've got this production company now. What next? And I kind of wanted to do something lower stakes. I'd done a big film and all the stress and pressure with festivals and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, the time, the money, the pressure.
Yes. So I sort of thought, why don't I do a few smaller projects? And so, Samantha Skelton, shout out, love you, Sammy. Samantha had played in Wild Dances, and she was, I really clicked with her, and I thought she was a really great actress. But, she confided in me that she kind of always gets girl next door roles. Like, she actually read for both parts.
Is this
the stepsister? So, she's a really nice looking young lady. And she actually read for both roles in Wild Dances. She read for the bad girl who was smoking behind the building, and she read,
Bad girls are always smoking behind the building.
yeah,
Let's
well,
just face facts.
she read for that part, and she also read for the part of Emily, which was like the dorky friend.
Yeah.
And she did Emily very well, and I cast her as Emily because she kind of, that was sort of what we had another girl that did the bad girl role, but she read both parts equally well. And this was what struck me, is I sort of said to her, "What's a part you don't get to play?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm always cast as the girl next door."
It's a frequent thing, yeah.
I said, "What role would you like to play?" And she said, "I would like to play someone like a bit mental, like someone who's like a bit
off the edge.
You kind of borderline wonder if they need help."
Yeah. They're off the reservation.
Yeah, so we sort of thought, well, why don't we write this scene about a pathological liar? Because we every girl has a friend like that that's just like, they exaggerate, and it's actually really frustrating to be around them because you're like, that never happened. We thought, well, what would happen if someone actually confronted her and said, that never happened? So we wrote this scene. We went to a pub and we had many drinks, and we basically, every mean thing that we just thought we could never say to these kinds of really unhinged friends that we had, we just kind of wrote it down. And the Stepsisters was born of that. And I had met Flick through Western Sydney filmmakers. And we had decided to make a film about stepsisters because we thought that was an interesting dynamic, because kind of, it's often very tense when there are blended families for whatever reason. And I liked this idea of someone like an older sister that didn't look anything like her, and there's kind of all this hidden tension, but we just captured them at one point in their relationship. And so that was Flick, and so she did a fantastic job as the sister. So that was Stepsisters, and so this is what Showpiece Shorts was born out of. I made 4 films last year.
Yeah, I couldn't find the 4th one because I know you had Cool Badge. Was it called Cool Badge?
Cool Badge. Yes.
What was Cool Badge about?
That was Tom Misser, so a friend of mine. And he also he'd come to me because he's like, I kind of want to do a showreel scene, and I'd spoken to him, and he was a Samoan Australian actor, and he says, the kinds of roles I always get given are kind of someone in the dole queue, something really offensive and stereotypical, and we're like, okay, well, why don't we do something a little bit different? And so we decided to come up with sort of, also he was also gay, and he was always getting cast as a gay man, and I asked him if he'd be interested in doing a heterosexual character, something different, and he said he would be, and we decided to kind of I have a lot of thoughts about interracial marriages, obviously coming from a mixed race family myself, but we sort of thought this scenario that we were both familiar with of 2 people early on in their relationship, and kind of nice white girl finds out that her boyfriend has actually fathered a child from a previous relationship, was sort of the scenario, and that was the thing. Him and I came up with that together. We wrote the script.
So you sort of like meet you meet an actor and you go, all right, so what's the role that you want to do? And then they give you an idea and you go, all right, I'm going to write something for that.
Yeah, pretty much. I like to involve people. I want them to own it a little bit. So it was kind of like, what's the part that you wish you got cast for but you never do? And, in this case it was like the hunky romantic lead, but who also like isn't just yet some guy in the dog queue. Like,
okay, so you're out there to break typecasts.
Yes, of course.
That's interesting.
And so, I had Samantha, who's a blonde-haired girl, but she wanted to play someone with some depth, not just the kind of cute girl next door.
She wanted to do the ditzy anymore. She actually wanted to do something that she can put her mind around.
Yes. And then I had June, who had approached me. Shout out to June.
Big shout out to June.
Sydney.
Well, this is one where we come together.
Yes,
because I worked on this one with you.
Yeah,
I got to be. This is one of my rare occasions where I'd be a DOP.
It was great. Well, so what happened was Junie came to me and said, would you? Can we do a scene together? And I basically said, yes, but making a film costs money.
It does, people. The reality is real.
Do you have money? She's like, no, not really. I'm like, okay, well, let's ask around and see if we can get people to collabs on us and, give us mates rates and whatever. And we did. We sort of thought, Ross knows how to shoot stuff. Let's ask Ross.
He can do it. He can do it.
But it was a similar thing with June. Like, she kind of wanted to play something really meaty. And, like, you can tell just when you meet June that she's got this really interesting backstory.
Big shout out to June.
Yeah, we love you, June.
We love you, mate. Yeah.
And so and it had to be simple. Like, the thing is, when I wrote these scenes, they're all 5 minutes long, but they had to take place in a single location. They had to be very easy to shoot. And so this one's called Another Crack in the Wall, the one that Junie was in. And it was very close to home for her, being kind of the story of a of a single mother.
Yeah, a struggling single mum.
With two kids. They're actually grandkids, so we don't know what happened to the mother in that one, but it's assumed that the mother was not fit to look after her children, and she's, a woman who really should be looking forward to retiring, but she's having to work very hard. And we just kind of, the setup for that was that, she's on the phone trying to get out of having to pay a bill, like just desperate. And that's a scene we could shoot very easily in a car.
Yeah.
So I think, workshop these little scenes.
I did get to do a few gimbal shots in that film, and I was really stoked because I think that's like one of two films that I've used the gimbal on, because the rest of it's all been commercial. Commercial work, yeah. I actually got to shoot something cool, like something fun.
Yeah.
With all the gear out, yeah.
Well, and this is what I say to filmmakers as well. Like, most people that have fancy gear, like, a lot of them will maybe cut you a deal if you're doing something that's a little bit interesting for them to shoot.
Yeah.
If they're used to doing cosmetic ads.
Yeah.
You're offering something interesting.
Like a lot of things I've done are car porn. So you shoot lots of cars, right?
Yeah.
Shooting, like, you go to a car show, shoot a whole bunch of cars.
Yeah.
And most of the time I've been, you're struggling artist. You can't afford a gimbal, so you got to become a good cameraman. Like, you just don't rely on a gimbal to get your shot. You show people shots and they're like, oh, what gimbal are you using for that? And you're like, that ain't a gimbal, bro. That's me holding my breath, fucking working for my money.
Well, and the thing about Another Crack in the Wall is that, it is visually quite interesting. It's shot in an interesting way, and that's you.
Yeah. No. Well, thank you. But with showpiece shorts aside, I must mention another film that it was an absolute pleasure showing it made in the West, and that was Musings.
That was actually the fourth showpiece short.
Was that? Oh, so that's the fourth one.
Yes, I wrote that part for Alessia.
I didn't know that was a part of that.
The thing with Alessia, I saw her in a student production of August Osage County. August Osage County, it's a very adult kind of play, and she played the role that Julia Roberts plays in the movie. So in theatre, she was 19 when I saw her. She was absolutely mind-blowing. Just extraordinary young woman, so commanding, so interesting to watch. Crying and screaming, and she did it all with a flawless American accent, right?
Yeah.
And I just thought, who is this woman who's, so talented? And she was playing a 50-year-old, right? So, you can do that in a university student production. You can have a 19-year-old playing a 50-year-old.
Yeah, because people will suspend that disbelief.
Absolutely, in a way they don't for films.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking it was quite sad. I thought, God, if she ever does make films, like, she approached me because she found out that I was a filmmaker. And I just thought, if she ever does make a film, she'll get such a crappy role that doesn't show her off, because this role in August Osage County, it's so meaty. It's this woman caught between dealing with her husband and her mother, and it's all very loaded. And I just thought, oh God, roles for young women are terrible for the most part, because most filmmakers are dudes who never got laid in high school, and then they have access to actresses who are beautiful and very insecure.
I think I don't think I'm one of those filmmakers. I just need to point out I'm a dude.
That's okay. You are.
I'm a dude. I'm a filmmaker. Maybe I didn't get laid in high school, actually. Maybe that's the problem.
You didn't have to share that, Ross. I was talking in the royal way. I think the lady doth protest too much.
Well, I'm a geek, man. What do you expect? If you're a bit geeky, you don't always attract the ladies,
Well, so this is the thing. Alessia is also, her dad's from Argentina, and her mum's Italian. There are lots of Italians in Argentina. So I also, for a little while, I'm so obsessed with Pedro Almodovar, and I thought I had really wanted to make an homage to Pedro Almodovar.
Yeah, that's what I'm going with this film. Like the color in this movie, it's just brilliant.
Oh,
I love
thank you. Well, look, and that was.
It's very deliberate. It's very focused.
It's very deliberate.
It's very deliberate film.
So this is the thing. So after I made Wild Dances, which had Musings literally has a 10th of the budget of Wild Dances, literally a 10th. It is not a 10th of the film. It's a great film. It's just it's a.
You got a roll
film.
in the background there, Nate? Can you get that roll in the background for us? There we go. Oh man, look, as I was saying, like the colour in this, I just find absolutely amazing.
So have you seen any of Pedro Almodovar's films? Because that's what he's famous for.
No, I haven't. I've only seen shorts that you've shown me online.
Well, this is the thing. So I'm so obsessed with
while we're being drunk in bars.
Probably. I'm so obsessed with Pedro Almodovar, the brilliant Spanish director. And he's got really iconic colours. But this is the thing. So Musings grew, like all these showpiece shorts, they grow from the actor. So they're all written for the actor. They're centred around the actor. I pitched to Alessia the same as I did to all the others who I'd done a showpiece shorts piece for, which was basically, my budget is blah, and what you will get is a 5-minute video that allows you to, play a meaty role that I'll write for you, show you off in whatever angle you want, that has the production values of a film. You can put in your showreel. That was basically the pitch. And she's like, oh, so, I pay blah amount and we shoot in one day and I get 5 minutes. I'm like, yes. And she's like, oh, well, my friend Helen is really, really good at taking photos. Maybe she'll do it for us. And Helen actually made, this is Helen Wells, who was the DP. Yeah,
she did a really good job. Beautiful job.
So Helen, this is such a great story. Helen's a childcare worker by day, right? But she made beautiful cosplay music videos as a hobby. She had some Patreon subscribers because she was really good. She had a really solid online following. And she came on board to shoot Musings for us. And I'm so proud that I could be this person's introduction to kind of making a short film. She'd never made a short film before. She'd made music videos. Yeah,
it was schmick, hey?
I thought she did a superb job, and we just sort of thought, we've got Helen, she'll do it for us for free, but we should probably get some good gear for her. So this is, you make your decisions about what resources do we have and what should we invest in.
Yeah, what's in reach. You got to do what's in reach.
Yeah, that's right. And so I was really fortunate. My friend, Dr. Paul Smith, he is actually a doctor. He's a PhD doctor.
He's not a worm, but he is a real doctor. Yeah.
But he had volunteered to do some music, and I said, he was also a big Pedro Almodovar fan, and I said, look, I'm doing this one and I want to do an homage to Almodovar. But I also wanted to make a statement about the Australian film industry, because I got very sick of...
Here you go, making a statement again. Always got to make a statement.
I do. Well, my films come from somewhere really personal, and I just sort of... I say this to every filmmaker, make a film you would go see yourself. Rule number 1, be really honest with yourself about your taste. Okay?
Yeah, totally.
Right? I like Eurovision. I made a fucking film about Eurovision. Now, Quentin Tarantino, one of my heroes, he likes violence and women's feet, so he makes films with violence and women's feet. Even if that might alienate some parts of his audience, he doesn't give a shit. It's what he likes. He'll put it in his movies. He likes blaxploitation, so he cast Pam Grier and Jackie Brown, right? Yeah. He doesn't intellectualize his choices. This is just like...
And Ozploitation.
Well, yeah, but he just... this is what I mean.
Look at the way he shoots cars.
There's so much filmmaking... I really hate certain filmmakers because I just feel like they're really pretentious, and it's like, I'm using cello music. I'm like, bitch, do you ever listen to the cello ever? When you're driving, do you listen to cello music? Of course you fucking don't. You listen to music you like. So use the music you like in your movies. Don't put something that you think will make yourself sound serious-minded. Yes, right? Be honest with yourself about your tastes. And Pedro Almodovar is exactly the same. He likes Douglas Sirk melodramas, so he makes films with these Douglas Sirk melodramas kind of looks to them. He likes these really kind of rhapsodic Baroque storylines about ballerinas and matadors and all this sort of stuff. So that's what he makes, right? And I always just say that to people. Make a film you would want to see. I like films with lots of dialogue, right? I watched The Lord of the Rings. It's 3 hours long. I can't tell you what happened in it. I can watch Kevin Smith's Clerks, which is 80 minutes long, and I can tell you every line of dialogue. I'm a very oral person. Yeah. I like movies that are chatty. I like movies that are about people and relationships.
But I think you have a good balance, though, as a filmmaker, because you can run the risk of telling too much and not showing enough.
Yes, but I mean, this is the thing. I have a visual style here.
Yeah. You certainly have that visual style.
Pedro Almodovar's films are really, they center on women. He has a lot of films about actresses playing actresses. So one of the biggest compliments was I made Musings, and I had all these. I deliberately kind of went out to make a film because I had this stunning Latin actress as well who was so good, but and also was queer, and I thought I would like to make
great performance too.
It's stunning, and I wanted to make a film. This, Me Too was going on, but I was really curious about women who are gay, who don't like men, but work in the film industry and have to pretend to be available, right? And this is something I've seen a lot. And I sort of thought, okay, well, what if there's this young woman and we see her and she's going on what looks like a date, but it's actually a work meeting with this really sleazy guy, played to perfection by Alex Ewan, who I also met through Western Sydney Filmmakers. And he's such a pro, and that performance is, I could watch it all day. He's just so good. It's so good. It's so funny. He nailed everything in one take. He was a complete pro. And so, you have Alex playing this, who's actually a very sweet Kiwi guy, playing this incredibly gross, seedy, Australian filmmaker, director guy. And, you know, so it starts out with a date. You think they're having a date.
That's right, because he wants to like have a relationship with her in the film.
Well, he's just like a typical film
sleazy
dude,
sort of,
right?
Yeah,
who makes really mediocre content but still manages to get hot women to bang them because so many people want to be fucking actors. And I just,
well, as a filmmaker, I'm still waiting to bang all these hot women. I don't think that's
maybe you act with integrity and therefore it's not an issue, but for a lot of men it's not. And I wanted to make a film that satirizes a lot of, you know, having just a woman who's like nodding and smiling and people assume she's flirting with him and she doesn't. She thinks he's repulsive, right? But so many people will assume if a girl's being nice to them it's because they like it. I was like, no, it's because they it's because there's other reasons. And then this idea that she goes home and she's actually got an older female partner, and all this stuff about her relationship and her identity as an actress starts to come out. And this idea of, you know, we've got the scene of the monologue, the sort of film within a film stuff. So one of the biggest compliments I had, and I was really fortunate, I had met Rachel Carey, who's a wonderful director that I'm going to do some stuff with next year. She's from New York, went to NIDA, did a Master of Fine Arts there. She's just directed a great play called Surf Seance, interactive horror musical mystery, I think, something like that. It's really, really great. And she...
Long title.
Yeah, I think it's called Surf Seance, an interactive horror musical mystery. And that's what it is, yeah.
Long but good.
And Rachel put me in touch with, she had seen Wild Dances at the Mardi Gras Film Festival, and she put me in touch with Kate Beer, who was at NIDA and doing production design. And Kate I gave her a budget of like $250 and she just made it look like $1 million. My dream is to one day have enough money to properly hire Kate to do my production design because she's superb. And she made this film look like an Almodovar film. She just took the brief really seriously. She went and watched his movie. She took notes. She played around in Photoshop. She showed me concepts. And she just did an extraordinary job. And then, of course, I put some money into getting a proper colorist. So
it's so difficult. Like, I've done colour for people before, and I'm usually the guy that go, can you rescue this for me? And I'm like, why do I have to rescue this? It's so hard.
I actually used a guy from Pittsburgh who... I managed to keep that one quiet.
Yeah, well, no, but that's okay. You got to go abroad sometimes. You do. You have to.
Well, yeah, no. I used a guy from Pittsburgh who I had been in talks with about making alter ego with, and he was a very accomplished director of photography, but he was also a colorist, and I thought it was a really good way to test the working relationship. And he did a superb job. We had to do it all remotely. We had to do it all through Skype, but he did a great job.
Yeah, but it's good to do things like that. It's good to start relationships like that, I think.
Absolutely, and I just found it such a positive experience, and you just get a real sense of you know, how people take direction. Like Robert Altman gave a really who's a director I really love and have so much time for, but he gave a really good piece of advice with directors. He just said, working with a DP, he was talking about how when he made his film Three Women, which is superb. If you get a chance to watch Three Women, you really should. But it's set in the desert, and he was talking about desert folk and how they're kind of funny and different to other sorts of folk. And he wanted this movie to look kind of really flat and arid because it's a movie about people from the desert. And he said that the first DOP he actually fired. He said his shots were beautiful, but he wasn't making the movie that I was making. Right? So when Raphael first coloured Musings, he did a superb job. He made it look like bloody film, but I had to say it's not the film I'm making. So, for example, just like a little bit of detail with colourists, okay?
Yeah. Okay.
So the brighter that we made Alessia's jacket, so Alessia's jacket is this superb, rich red colour.
Yeah.
But the brighter we made it, the less you can see the fibres, right? That's a nit.
Yeah, because if you pull something up, you're going to lose it. You're going to lose texture.
So I had to just be like, no, I don't care if you lose the fibres of her jacket. Make it boost it, make it bright.
It makes it softer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of that, and having the confidence as a director to be like, no, this is the film I want to make, because you deal with technicians and they want everything to be like beautiful, obviously, and they often can make things really beautiful, but you've got to be like, no, but this is the film I'm making.
Yeah, I needed to pop this way because you certainly there's colours that you've selected through that film that just pop, and you can tell it's a deliberate choice. It's not something that you go, that colour correction worked really well. It wasn't something that was ambiguous. It's something that you've gone, I want that to be up.
Yeah.
I want it to be cherry red and I want it to pop.
Well, probably the best compliment I had is I recently saw Pedro Almodovar's most recent film, which is Pain and Glory, Dolor y Gloria, and I took Jonathan, who I love Jonathan very, very much.
Big shout out, Jonathan. I think he gets a shout out every episode.
Because he's special. He's special.
The J-Man. The J-Man.
utterly brilliant producer, first AD, and like
Us directors
great
always
writer.
fighting over Jonathan.
Well, Jonathan, okay, so to be a good
We
producer...
steal him off
I
each.
know.
We always steal him from each
I'll
other.
tell you why. Jonathan has the most extraordinary disparate skill set. So to be a good producer, you need to... Most producers fall into either one or two categories. They're either like really, really amazing project managers who can like look at a budget, work to time...
They got Excel Kung Fu.
Yeah, write a good funding application,
Yeah.
write a good pitch document, la 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 la. You know, talk about market. Like, you know, they've got this really strategic brain. But you know, sometimes as a result of that, they're kind of very businessy and a little bit cold,
Detached.
and then sometimes you get other producers who are really enthusiastic and really fun to chat to, and
Good
really really
communicators.
joyful, but they don't have those hard skills. Jonathan has both. He's a
Yeah,
freaking badass communicator who just gets everybody on side.
Yeah.
He's so charming and.
No, he does. He enrolls people in ideas. He brings people along for a journey. Everyone knows the destination. The destination is the screening of your film. Everyone knows the destination.
Yes.
He doesn't worry about that. He brings people along for an experience. And that's something you can't learn. You just do.
I don't know. He just got. I just don't think I've ever met anybody with such badass organizational skills who like keeps a bullet journal and has really good filing systems, but also
I know people like that.
is
Big
also
shout out to Misty.
but also like the warmest, most friendly person ever. So I love Jonathan very much. But Jonathan really surprised me because he'd never seen a Pedro Almodovar film, and I took him to Pain and Glory because it was screening as Queer Screens Film Festival a couple of months ago. I saw it as part of the Sydney Film Festival. Obviously, I'd already seen it, but I took him. And it's such a wonderful movie. It's rich. There's just something in every scene to find interesting. So I was just glued the whole time. And then he gave me the biggest compliment. He's like, I really could see all the tropes that you satirized in Musings. He's like, you had the monologue, you had the actor within an actor, you had the film within a film, you had the colours.
So that's what you call the mise en scène, right? You had the mise en scène going on in there, and the mise en abîme. The film within the film, the idea within the idea within the idea.
Well, yeah, so Pedro Almodovar does that really well. He kind of has films in a film, he has characters watching trash TV, and I kind of put as many of them as I possibly could into Musings.
That's what I mean. I'm a real big fan of subtext, because you can have this idea of a film where you get from A to B to C, but when you sometimes watch a film, it's not necessarily about the story. It's about what's happening behind the story, which is actually the story.
Yeah, I think looking at a drama exercise I did at, when I was still thinking about maybe I want to be an actor at like maybe 15 or whatever, but I went and did something, and they had a really good exercise, which is they have two people and you improvise a scene. And let's say that it's a husband and wife driving, and they're having a fight in their real life about, I was trying to think of the example that they use, but maybe they're having a fight about whether to like sell the house they're in or buy a new house or just something really dumb.
Send the kid to a public school or a private school.
Right, okay. So they're in car, and then it's just kind of like, why are you always fighting with me? Why are you always picking a fight with me?
You never side with me.
Yeah, exactly.
You're always opposed.
Yeah, exactly. And just that kind of scene. And I think that really stuck in my malleable teenage mind because I do try and direct actors that way. It's sort of like, okay, they're arguing about this, but it's really about this.
Well, this is something I ask a lot of directors as well, because I'm always curious, because I know how I run a set as a director. Like, I'm more of the negotiator, creative inputs. Like, there are checkpoints that I need met, but I'll give you a creative license. Here's a framework, exist inside of that framework. Some other directors are like, no, this is the cue point. You need to say this line at this time, and you need to be blocked at this point to do that. Where do you sort of fit on that sort of spectrum? Like, are you the dictator, or are you more of the collaborator? Because we all have the elements of everything, but what's the foremost for you?
It needs to look natural. So, for example, one of the difficulties I have with the kind of dialogue that I write and Australian actors who are not often used to it. So I'll give you an example. Wild Dancers, it was really important to me that Todd's mum said, do you have to wear a suit and all that palaver? And it had to be the word palaver. Immediately, the word palaver tells us that she's a middle-aged woman of a certain, she's of a certain generation. She's Aussie, from the country. It immediately locates so many details about this woman. Like, I mean, that's my advice to writers as well. Like, use your slang. If you had to write a scene of Bina and Ross together, you would choose different words. We talk at different paces. We use different slang.
Yeah, totally.
What's your character's rhythm? And so I write with a really clear idea of what kind of words. And the thing is, if that actor has not used that word, so the actor who played who played that character, she never used the word palaver, so it sounded awkward when she said it. But I was really insistent that she say it. I said, no, I'm not going to make a concession on that. That's slang. That word is important. But there were other scenes where actors would say something, like Ange who played Michelle in Musings, and also did phenomenal job.
Just pull that mic a little bit back towards you.
Sorry.
There we go. Yeah, good.
But Ange would often sort of make a suggestion, and it was almost always really, really good, and it came from the world of the characters. So I think I kind of, I have a script, and then sometimes when you do rehearsals, you realise that lines don't work. And also, I think knowing your limitations, like obviously when Olga in Wild Dances, who's Ukrainian, suggested things, I'm just like, I'm not an expert in Ukrainian culture. Like in the original script, the father was supposed to hit her. Newsflash, lots of Indian men hit their daughters and don't really think of it's a problem. So I grew up in a household where that happened, and I didn't really, to me that was normal. And so in the original script, her father hits her. And when you
retrofit that to that story, they go, well, that's not really.
They said that. They just say, no, that would be a big no. You wouldn't do that. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe he just becomes really threatening, or he yells at her. So they changed that scene. And
So you give that creative license over and feel okay?
I think it's kind of like you've got to know what you're the expert in. So I am the expert. I've met...
Play to your strengths.
I've met enough middle-aged ladies who use the word palaver to know that in that scene she had to use the word palaver. But, when I have a big group of Ukrainians telling me that the correct way the family would be sitting and doing this is this way, I'm going to take it from them. But you've got to, like, for example, okay, say you're directing, like, a love scene with two people. You can't tell them to do it the way you would do it. That's just going to look stupid. It has to come from them. You have to, like... I don't know, you have to sort of...
Give them creative license.
You have to make it come from them so that it doesn't hang awkwardly on it. Like, you fashion a script and it's your garment, but your actor is not you. They might be an idealised version of you. They might be a version of you from 10 years ago, but they are not you. So if you try and force them into the garment that you've made, it can hang awkwardly on them. But sometimes it's what's needed. So, like Hal Hartley is a director. He's very interesting, but he's like a, say it this line, this way type thing.
That's what I mean. Like, there's a spectrum of directors, right? So you can be the dictator versus all the way to the full creative license, like the Spike Lee kind of like no script, just this is your character, now go.
Yes, I would only do that with very, very experienced actors. So people like Jack Nicholson and Susan Sarandon, they learn their...
Love Susan Sarandon, man. Like,
well, they're actors who do lots and lots and lots of backstory, and then they'll get their script literally at the last minute so that when they say lines, they sound... not wooden, they sound natural.
Yeah. They're not whittled. They're like they're very like organic.
Yeah, so you got to know your actors. So my mentor is actually Rolf de Heer, and I've talked to him a lot about working with actors. And he talked about. I hope he wouldn't mind me saying this, but this is stuff he told me. He said that the difference between when you did Alexandra's Project, the woman who played the lead, she did so much rehearsal. She knew right down to the second what she was going to say. Whereas Gary Sweet was like, nope, I'm just going to react to what I see. And I don't know, every actor's different. You got to respect your actors and their preferences because they're the ones who are making magic for you. But there are just sometimes where you do have to push and say, no, they have to use this word, or you have to do it this way, or that gesture is going to look... actors, don't bite your lips and stuff. Like, it just looks fucking hokey. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, don't do
but it comes down to a bit of... there's a bit of it's a little bit ambiguous sometimes because what you like and what I like could be different.
And I aim for naturalism in films. So almost always my line would be... Like, one of the big problems I have with actors, particularly in Australia, is like they just want to theatre everything. It's like, did you really want me to say that? It's like, would you ever talk like that to anybody? Just talk to me like you said.
Yeah, see, I'm down with that. Like, I love slang. Yeah. I love cultural references. I like to ethnically bend things as well. Like, I've worked with Asian actors before, and they would go, so you don't want me to be stereotypically Asian? I'm like, yeah, man, I love your Aussie accent. I want you to be Aussie as an Asian dude. I want you to be Aussie, because that's the cool thing about you. That's what's going on right here. Yeah. That's the role. And sometimes they're taken back by that. Different actors I work with, they're like, oh, so you don't want me to be stereotypical? No, I want you to be the role.
Yeah, I think I always just say this to people, like, make films. I remember watching Art Attack when I was really young. Did you watch Art Attack with Neil Buchanan?
No.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, just on the spectrum of like me not getting laid in high school, how the hell did you get laid in high school? Because like I am geeky, but that is like uber nerdish.
Well, watching Art Attack.
Yeah, totally. I don't even know what it is. What is it? Can we get it up and running?
Yeah, it's just some Art Attack.
I'm totally going to.
Do you even know what? Do you know what this is, Nate?
I know all about art.
Well, you guys are like super nerds. Maybe I'm just living under a rock. Am I living, is that what's happening?
Fantastic British kid show.
Yeah, did you never watch ABC Kids? You had a deprived childhood, boy.
No, maybe I'm just too old. I was into Mully Grubs, man. You know.
I was in the Mully Grubs too. Come on, man.
Mully Grubs me, Mully Grubs you. Yeah.
Here we go. This is Art Attack.
I've never seen this.
Okay, this is...
Oh, we got a fucking ad. I'm obviously going to cut the ad out. Let's just get to the point. I think, fuck, it's
It's
on
the
mute.
coolest art show in the world, really. And they
I don't know how I've
do
missed
like
this.
this massive piece.
You guys
they'll mow an art piece into
I'm out there like
lawn
fucking Pluto, man. I'm fucking gone. But you guys are like, in the Kuiper Belt. What is going on here? Oh, wow. I've never seen this. Is this like, what is this, 90s?
Yeah, man. It's like arts and crafts show for 90s kids.
Yeah, okay. Because maybe it's a 5-year difference or something like that. Because like I was like into I had Sesame Street. Didn't you guys have Sesame Street? And all
yeah,
that?
Sesame
Right?
Street.
Yeah.
I didn't have this. And the Book Place. Remember the Book Place?
No.
You don't remember the Book Place?
I remember the book place.
Yeah, with the worm.
Yep.
They had the worm. Yeah, I where do you guys get this from?
Because ABC Kids, dude.
Yeah. I was a teenager. I was busy listening to Nirvana at this point, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, well, my point was, I remember watching Art Attack when I was really young, and Neil Buchanan, this delightful English guy who says, you might want to hang it on your wall. He talks like this.
Yeah.
Anyway, one of the little tips about drawing and colours and perspective and, little tips for making your artwork better. But one of the tips he made was draw what you see, not what you think you see. So he did a demonstration. He says, now I'm here and I'm going to draw my mug here. And I'm going to
draw my mug.
I'm going to draw my mug here, but I think I see this. And he drew like a really sort of cartoonish, stereotypical mug. And yeah, it looked dodgy. And then he says, now I don't draw what I think I see, I draw what I see. And he puts his mug in front of him and he actually just copies the lines, he copies the shadows, and of course he gets a really, really accurate picture of the mug.
So like a 1-for-1 approach.
Yeah, rather than so if you had to like look away and say, I think I see a glass, like I say, if you say draw a house, right? Most people would draw like a square with a triangle at the top, right?
Yeah, stereotypical.
Yeah, so you're relying on how it's been drawn. You're relying on how it's been drawn before to draw the thing. And he goes, draw what you actually see. So if you actually sat down and looked at a house really carefully and tried to get the proportions properly, you would actually probably get something very good. And I use that. That's really me as a filmmaker. Draw what you see. Make a film about what you see, not what you think you see. Do you think like it's a real bugbear? I
really resonate with that. I think you're really onto something there. I really dig that. Like my thing is doing gangster films. Right, I love making gangster movies.
Yeah.
Even though they may be outlandish, the language I use, I like to use like real language, like what people actually say.
Yes.
That's what I like to do.
Well, then that's what you're doing. You're living that philosophy. You're not making a film about what you think you see, which will always be derivative, right? So say, you know...
Because people relate to it. They go, I got a friend like that. I know someone who says things like that.
You will, without even thinking about it, if you just take this approach to your filmmaking, you will, without even really having to give it too much thought, you will make something really authentic and interesting, and other people will be able to connect with it. So, like, just look, a little example. The amount of films I've seen that are set in Australian high schools, and like the kids all wear mufti and they have like the jocks and the nerds or whatever, like just really.
So we're going to Grassy High, or are we like
no, but it's just kind of like if you grew up in Australia, you probably had to wear shitty school uniforms.
We
right?
did. We all did.
Do you know what I mean? Like actually make stuff from what you remember and like make it funny and you know,
maybe that's an Americanized idea.
That's the thing. So you're relying on how someone has drawn it before you. You are the equivalent of you are drawing the house with the square with the triangle on the top and being like, here's my film. Like, no, draw the house you actually see in front of you. You'll get something really interesting. Draw the world as you see it. If you, and you know, with Musings, for example, I have sat through so many lesbian films because, you know, I toured Wild Dances and that was a queer film as well. But, you know, just the amount I see, and they're all just like really twee and like, oh, we loved each other, but we were married and we couldn't be together. And they just kind of feel really, really formulaic, and I'm just like, no, I'm going to make a film about two women who are having a fucking horrible fight and being awful to each other, because I have seen that and it's fucking not pretty, right? Nothing worse than two girls who are romantically involved fighting. Speaking from personal experience, it's nasty. And I kind of was like, okay, but that's the details of relationships as I have observed them, not as I think they should be portrayed. And I think, this comes back to being in a minority as well. Like, you might be from Western Sydney and therefore you don't want to make a film where people speak using slang. But it's like, then you're judging your own experience.
No, I like that's the film that I want to watch.
That's what I mean. Yeah. That's the right approach to have. Whereas I think a lot of people judge their tastes and they go, oh, I can't make a film about blah because that's not highbrow enough. And I'm just like, but it's your taste.
Yeah,
you're
but that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
But look, Bina, we have actually come to the end. Believe it or not. Look, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I'd like to put a big shout out to everyone at SSP, Made in the West. Are you going to be at Made in the West this year?
Absolutely. I'm actually really looking forward to going and not having a film in it and actually just being able to enjoy it with no pressure.
Well, by the time this goes to air, Made in the West is on in a week. 23rd of November. Check it out. You're going to see some really good films from some really good filmmakers. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank all of the guests that have been on the Pagey train this year. And I'd also like to thank one of my biggest compadres through the entire show, Nate Robertson, for doing the audio operation and the camera operation and the podcast operation, producing this. Thank you very much. Big shout out to Misty for also helping me produce this. And
love you, Mist Bum.
Yeah, big shout out. And the J-Man, you're always in the background helping me out. I really appreciate it. And
shout out to the J-Man.
And look, before we go though.
Yeah.
Have you got anything on the boil? Like, you got any projects out there?
I do. So, yeah, I think this is kind of thing. I had such a busy year last year and I made so much content. And I made about half an hour's worth of content for about $5,000 with all the showpiece shorts. And it did occur to me, I'm just like, I probably, if I had written it differently, I could have made them all kind of blend into each other like a feature. Maybe for not much more money. 1 weekend a month, I could make a low-budget feature film set in Western Sydney. So basically, I have a few different projects, but they're all tied up with producers, which, this comes back to the very beginning. I didn't have a producer. I was a reluctant producer. But I'm now at the point in my career where I have connected with producers. So I have, obviously, I optioned my script at the beginning of the year. That was a big deal. I've got this Co-Curious project, which is in the works. And if that all works out well, I will have a proper broadcast credit as a writer for something that's on screen, which, hopefully that will happen.
I know we get to this point and people don't want to go too far into their project.
Yeah, so I can't. I had to be very cagey. But the third thing is something that Rolf actually said to me, because my first script, Alter Ego, is set in Pittsburgh, and I've written another script and it's set in New Orleans. And he goes, your process is chaotic. He goes, you've got this film and it's set in New Orleans and you've got this film set in Pittsburgh. Bina, what you need is a low-budget film set in Western Sydney that you can shoot.
Totally.
As your first feature.
Figure out what's in your reach.
Yeah. So that's kind of... I've got two. The other one is I connected with... I didn't even get a chance to talk to this, but as a result of Musings screening at the Melbourne Queer Film Festival, I connected with a wonderful producer called Janine Barnes, who connected with me with Anupam Sharma, who's a wonderful Indian-Australian director. And she asked me if I had a few projects that I'd want to pitch, and one of them is a horror movie. So basically my next project will be my first feature, but it's either going to be a low budget kind of Happiness meets John Waters Baltimore set in Western Sydney, or it's a horror movie about menstruation.
Or both.
No, one is very definitely set in India and one is set in Western Sydney. Okay. So it will be whichever one I can get off the ground first.
Well, look, don't forget to check out Bina Bhattacharya on Gemme de la Femme. You can find her on Facebook, Vimeo and YouTube. But look, I'd just like to do another shout out to everyone that's been on the show this year. Thank you so much. We'll be back for 2020. Don't forget to check out Made in the West on the 23rd of November. Don't forget to check out the SSP films we have coming out in the next 18 months. And once again, thank you very much, and thank you for joining us on the Pagey train.
It's been really fun. Thanks, Ross.
All right, we're done.
Fun.
We're done, baby.
Yeah.
We're done, Nate. That's one season down, baby.